Senator Janine Ward-Engelking of Boise sits on the Commerce and Human Resources Committee, the Education Committee, and the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee. She joins us this week in the studio to talk about budget negotiations, tax conformity, and her legislative priorities. So you serve on the Joint Finance Appropriation Committee, also known as JFAC. Can you tell us about what those budget negotiations have looked like and what priorities you're planning on advocating for in those negotiations?
Yeah, thank you for that question. To be honest, we left last session with about 400 and some million on the bottom line, and we quickly realized that the big tax cut that my colleagues gave was too large and we were underwater. So the governor in August authorized a 3% holdback, which has become permanent now. And then just this week, my colleagues, my co-chairs from JFAC have issued, they would like to do a 1% and or a 2% ongoing in the 2026-27 budgets. So, which is very problematic. We're all the 26 budgets end June 30th. So to do another 1 or 2% holdback would mean major furloughs and layoffs, and also programs cut that benefit Idahoans. And I'm not willing to do either of those, especially because they're ongoing and they're across the board. We're not being surgical about it. We're not looking at the needs of Idahoans. It would just be across the board. And we are sitting on $1.7 billion of taxpayer money in reserve. We can bridge that gap until we see where our revenues are in the next month or two.
And with the budget negotiations, so this week in the House, there was a bill introduced to conform to the tax cuts in the big, beautiful bill. What's your opinion on that tax conformity bill? And if it passes the House, how do you intend on voting?
Yes, that bill has a lot of moving parts in it. In fact, we're still trying to understand all the moving parts. One of the pieces is we could conform starting January 2026 and move forward. That's what the governor recommended. That would be my choice. I think the bill that was introduced in the House goes retroactive, goes back to January 2025, which causes all sorts of problems with the tax commission. And also people are already filing their tax returns. And so they would have to do an amendment, or they would have to redo their taxes. That's just complicated. And in my opinion, we're not ready to do that. So I would prefer one that goes from January 2026 moving forward. And it would save us about $155 million. And since we're underwater, it makes the most sense. And the tax commission said it usually takes them about 9 months to get the conformity piece plugged into their computers and stuff. So I think that would be my preference. So I will probably vote no on this, and hopefully we will get a new bill that starts January 2026.
You authored a bill that would restrict law enforcement officers from wearing masks. What was your reasoning behind this bill, and what do you hope it will accomplish?
Well, I grew up in rural Idaho, and also I'm a former school teacher. I'm a retired school teacher, and the thought of pulling over females or young adults and being a masked man with a gun, no visible identification, no uniform, and no marked car is pretty frightening, actually. We have a human trafficking problem in Idaho, and I think that just it's caused a fear factor. And as you know, law enforcement in Idaho, they wear uniforms, they have badges, they don't wear masks, and I don't see any reason to have a masked person, basically stopping people. If they're law enforcement, great. Do your job, that's fine. Have no problem with that. And to be honest, I looked up good guys wearing masks and what popped up was superheroes, and they have uniforms, they have costumes, we know who they are. So I don't know, this just seems like one small step we could do. I'd love to be able to afford body cams, but we can't afford that. So just making sure they're not masks would be helpful, I think.
Also, in the legislature this week, a bill was introduced that would prohibit local governments from having anti-LGBTQ discrimination laws. What are your thoughts, and how do you plan on voting on this bill?
Well, we're a part-time legislature, and it seems unreasonable to me that we think we can tell counties and cities and school districts how to run their entity. They're full-time, we're part-time. I have no problem with cities making their own laws, or school districts or counties. I think the government that's closest to the people is probably the most effective government we have. And so I don't think it's the state's job to preempt local control.
Do you have any other priorities for the rest of the legislative season? Is there any other bills that you're planning on introducing, or any other things you're hoping to accomplish with the rest of the session?
Yeah, we are doing some, and some of them are in conjunction with other members. But we're all about providing solutions. Maybe a pause on House Bill 93 from last year, the tax credit. All of our universities, colleges, school districts are taking a cut. It seems reasonable that private schools should take one too. We're also trying to put a pause on the big tax cut from last year, but we're doing a Senate resolution that condemns political violence of any kind, and it's a bipartisan resolution, so I'm proud of that. But mostly I'm working on things that I think will benefit children, students, and also just families in Idaho, make things more affordable and workable for them.
What is the best way for your constituents or the everyday average citizen to be involved in the legislative process?
Well, I think emails work. We get inundated sometimes, so that makes it, sometimes it's not as, we don't get back to people as timely as we would like to, but that's a good way. I think also anytime they can testify in committee, either remotely or in person, is helpful. We need to hear from Idahoans. That's, the bills we pass here impact everybody in every part of the state. So it's always important, I think, to hear from not just our constituents, but Idahoans, because it matters. And I do try to listen and do the best I can to represent not only my constituents, but the rest of the people in Idaho.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Senator, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Simon, for what you guys do. Bye-bye.